Hello and welcome back to the Pick Swap podcast. A little bit of a gloomy Friday following a pretty terrible Sixers loss. Back-to-back losses
Yeah,
from the Sixers. Not to correct myself too many times, but I'm here with Sean Bernard to share this pain. Sean, how you doing, brother?
not great. Definitely been better. It definitely feels like the Sixers are doing the opposite of peaking right before playoffs. It feels like they had their high with Harden and have been pretty much increasingly down since that point. So hanging in there, I'm okay. I've been better for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into it, we want to thank our current sponsor, BetUS, one of the best and leading sportsbooks and casinos in the game right now. They just added player props. You can use our code PickSwap at login to get your first bet risk free up to $500. Go in and bet on your Joel Embiid MVPs. Although things haven't been going too well for the team, he's still putting those numbers up. But right now he's fallen back down to second place
Yeah,
in most of the odds right now, which is disappointing for us. Um, but still, you can go get them while if there wasn't value before, there is now. So go to BetUS and bet with us. So we're gonna before we really dive into last night's game against Detroit, we'll talk briefly about the game on Tuesday night, which we covered right before it happened. So you had predicted a loss, I predicted a win. Pretty close game, came down to the wire. What was your total thoughts on that game?
yeah, that wasn't a loss I felt bad about. The Bucks loss specifically was kind of one. The Bucks are a great team. The Bucks also picked up a big win over the Nets last night as well. Overtime, great game there. They're like coming into ready for playoff modes, and this is the Bucks
Yeah.
are a team that I think is probably the number one contender in my mind for the title. Probably them and the Suns. I think it's a repeat as last year's the top two for how it's shaken out. For specifically the Sixers, I mean they went toe to toe with them pretty well. The Giannis minutes to start the fourth absolutely killed. Giannis had 15 of the Bucks 19 in the stretch for the end of the third and start of the fourth, which were the minutes that Embiid was off the court. Embiid talked post game about 6 game minutes of Giannis on the court without Embiid, and 3 of those without Harden on the court either is just completely unacceptable from a strategy aspect and from Doc Rivers managing of the rotations. And obviously, you want both those guys out there to end the game, but the game totally changed in that spurt, and that's been the story with this team all year. It has been surviving the non-Embiid minutes, and really has been the story since Embiid's entire career in Philadelphia. It's been surviving the minutes that he's not on the court. It did not happen with Giannis. Giannis is a terrific player, MVP caliber, one of the best 4 or 5 players in the league for sure, and totally just had his way with Paul Millsap. And I mean, very disappointing how everything swung so strongly there. Overall, like a loss. It's one of those like a loss isn't a bad thing, but how it happened definitely hurt.
Yeah. Bad taste in your mouth after that one for sure. I mean, it's your home floor. It's the beginning of the end of the season, basically, right? That was with 7 games remaining, or 7 games after that, and they had, I'm trying to revert back to the mindset I had going into that game without, the foggy glasses I have now. But you're looking forward and you're saying this is the easiest stretch we've had all season after this game. So like, it's kind
Yeah.
of, to me, it was kind of like buckle in, let's go toe to toe to this team, and you really want to win that game, prove something to yourself, your team, your fans, the rest of the league, that you can beat a team that's as good as Milwaukee, and then you can kind of settle down and shift gears, and what you should be thinking is go into kind of cruise control here and just beat the teams that you're better than, because you are better than every team that you're playing after that game. So disappointing, because I just thought that they might really lock in for that one. They didn't. Harden played really well in that game. To look back in that, we're going to talk about last night, which not so good. But when you think about the Milwaukee game, he did play really well, especially early on. So there's some silver linings there. I wasn't definitely not as pissed off after that one as I was about last night.
Yeah, for sure. Last night, I mean, like losses to the Suns and Bucks are totally respectable in terms of like those are
And
great
they played
teams.
them well.
Yeah, and played them well. The way the game happened, like they went toe to toe. They had their moments where I felt like they were in control. The Sixers did, and it just didn't go their way. The Pistons game is a whole different story with that. And just from what you've talked about, James, a couple weeks ago, and just kind of the like arrogance this team carries and the we're better than you, so we're gonna win attitude. It was on full display in this Pistons game, and it felt like like for pretty much the entirety of the game, there wasn't like the foot on the gas going hard moment. And sure, like even Embiid ending with 37 and 15, he had 7 turnovers, 3 late in the game that were very costly. Nobody else scoring particularly well. Harden with 18, 9 and 7. Didn't think it was a great Harden game either. Tobias had 14, Maxey had 13. The bench combined for 8 total points. They had 0 at halftime. There's just is like a lack of like everything
Yeah.
we're looking for. It's just not happening. And last night was just a brutal loss for the Sixers. And even going down to the wire, even in crunch time, it was one that it was like, we can't lose this game. The Sixers can't lose this one of the Pistons. And sure enough, that's exactly how the cards broke and how things happen. And the Pistons are a fun, youthful team. They're definitely buying into like still competing hard, still playing, but it's just an unacceptable loss no matter how you slice it up or cut it.
Yeah, man. Before I get into like the Sixers, Kate Cunningham is
Awesome.
that dude.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good. He's legit. All the things about him that they were talking about coming into this league, it's true. He was great last night. But to move into the Sixers, man, it's just, I mean, Joel Embiid came to play, right? 37 and 15. It's just, I mean, it's the same thing we've been talking about, bro.
Yeah.
Like, they literally clear out one side of the offense. There's no flow at all. And I know that Joel Embiid is the best player, arguably, in the world right now. So you go to him all the time. The problem is that you hand the ball to him, potentially one-on-one, 15 feet from the basket. He's going to get doubled. He's going to get tripled. The entire offense or the entire defense is staring at him. And they've been able to figure out rotations because the other guys aren't stepping up because it's literally just an isolation, one side, Joel Embiid. Maybe you'll run a pick and roll, but most of the time, if you do, they're literally going to either ice James Harden and force him to give the ball up, outside 5-10 feet outside the 3-point line, or they're going to let Joel catch the ball on the wing and then have to play one-on-one with a help defender standing on the block. It's nothing. It's motionless. It's lifeless. It's boring. It's slow. It's bland. This 2022, we saw what they were able to do when they were moving, when James Harden was basically coaching on the floor. Like, I'm just genuinely so done. And I cannot believe it's taken this long for everyone to kind of realize. I know that all of us were pretty pissed off after the way last season ended. Doc Rivers can't be here next season. Genuinely, Sean. I don't know if you're fully bought into that. He literally, like, it's taking your own life at that point if you go into next season with Doc Rivers as your coach. He's that bad.
Yeah, his seat absolutely has to be feeling hot right now. And you see the report about somebody. There was no names tied to it, but in the Athletic, somebody close to the Sixers organization that it was very much like said without saying that it was a player who wasn't feeling Doc, and then they said like, I can't even take you guys to make the finals this year, and the guy was like, I wouldn't either. So whoever this mystery player is, running through it could be any string of guys, could be Danny Green, Paul Millsap. It sounded like a veteran kind of guy that had been around the league. But regardless, these types of things leaking out at this stage in the season, A, is crazy, but B, like I understand. Like I see where it's coming from. I hate how much it's been pushed that like the kicking Doc out the door, because it absolutely seems like it's happening. And while I agree, and I don't think Doc can be a coach that brings his team to a championship, or probably any team to a championship at this stage in his career, in this stage of the NBA, I do think it's messed up that it's like happening right now. Like we haven't even entered the like measuring stick for this season of the playoffs, and how things happen is like what I think his pure judgment of Rivers is. And obviously there's critiques. There's very, very obvious like critiques of how the management of this team is not going right now. I do think the timing of it is very poor and how it's all happening up prior to the playoffs. But the end goal, and I guess my final point is like I do agree that like this is the decision, this is what needs to happen. But I don't. It does leave a little bit of a weird taste the way things are kind of already leaking out to me.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think everyone's fed up. Like, we've talked about Doc Rivers being a regular season coach, right? Remember last
Yeah.
year we were talking about how, he's done a great job the regular season. He's got this team prepared and ready. And for a while there last year, dude, like, especially early on, like probably up until the All-Star break, I felt like they came in every night, like prepared, ready to go. Like, there was a different feel about them, especially early on last season. And like, it's the exact opposite right now. And it's
Yeah.
just like, if this whole time he's been deemed as a regular season coach, does a really good job, getting guys through a season and keeping a right mindset and whatever it may be, but he's a really bad playoff coach, to now we're talking about him just constantly, like, he literally can't get out of his own way. Like, he can't not blow leads. Like, if they get out to 15 points, I have no expectation, no trust that they're going to keep that lead. And it's been that way, and I know it's been that way since the playoffs, but dude, take it last year completely out of the equation. It's actually crazy how often this dude blows leads. And like, I know that the players have to play, and I know James Harden's been struggling, and I know that the offense doesn't look good at all. And I know that there's, things happening. The bench unit isn't stepping up. But like, this is a coaching issue. Every third quarter, they get their ass beat. Why? Because other teams are making adjustments and the Sixers aren't. Like, that's how basketball works. And I don't know how you can, like, fire him now and give Sam Cassell a shot. Like, I don't even care anymore, dude. Like, it just, I get why people are frustrated. If I was a young player, I'd be pissed off. Imagine
Yeah.
watching DeAndre Jordan play every night.
Yeah, imagine being Paul Reed or Charles Bassey, being like I genuinely know I'm better at basketball than this guy at this point in his career, and just not being given a shot. It is crazy. It is super disappointing. I'm putting you on the spot here, James, but if you have to rank the three, I guess the most responsibility for recent Sixers bad trends, and I'm giving you James Harden, Doc Rivers, and the Sixers bench as a whole, how would you rank them?
I would go Doc. I guess Doc, Harden, then the bench.
Okay, wow.
Actually, I don't know. I guess I go Doc, bench. But like, I think the reason the bench sucks is because Doc sucks. Like, you know what I mean?
Or does
So
the
I don't know.
reason Doc sucks because the bench sucks? Because realistically, this is where I do get sympathy. I would put the bench first on that list. I would go bench Doc Harden at bench, maybe even bench Harden Doc. Uh, they're like looking at this list: Danny Green, George Niang, DeAndre Jordan, Shake Milton, Furkan Korkmaz is the 5-man rotation that got in
Yeah.
prior to garbage minutes last night. Like, you just have to find, like, it's tough to juice productive minutes out of that group. And I totally agree. Like, there can be more done in terms of staggering the rotation. But like, even at halftime, like, they had 5 shots when they had 0 points. It's like, you have to have a guy. You have to have like something, a guy, a unit that produces more than that. Like, even just attempting more than 5 shots is super important to, like, I don't know. It's very frustrating to me that, like, this has been it's the same story with the Sixers team. It's the same story with this current Sixers team. It has been for years, and I don't know. I just don't think there's enough talent there and enough production there from that bench unit, which I think is the root of a lot of these frustrations.
Yeah. I mean, which is fair. It's not a very talented group. And I mean, again, I think it's hindered by, like, if you're under the age of 30 right now and you're not, you know, a star, if you're not a starter and you're under 30, like, you're not playing. Like, I don't get the refusal and the stubborn, like, against a team like the Pistons, guys like that should
Yeah.
get a chance. Like, I guess maybe the situation might be that, you should be beating that team by 20. So, but even then, like, DeAndre Jordan would just play, and then like Paul Millsap would play. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't understand. It's difficult because I mean, do you ever consider moving Maxey to the bench? And like, I know he doesn't deserve that at all. Like, I know that's not the way, like, the way he's played this season, he shouldn't be relegated to the bench. But like, if you inject Danny Green into the starting lineup, and then, Maxey's the 6th man, and, you can just change up the pace and give him time on the court alone. Like, I don't know. I don't know where, because it just seems like 3 of the 4 guys can play well, the main guys.
Mm-hmm.
And Tobias has been playing really well. I don't want to go over that. Tobias has really impressed me recently, and he's just been solid, and he's done things, the way we were asking Tobias to play, he's been
He's
playing.
doing it. Yeah.
But it's always, at best 3 of the 4. The first couple games, it was all 4. It's like, oh, everyone's going, everyone's playing really well. Maxey hasn't had one of those big games since Harden and Embiid were on the court. So I don't know, man. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea of Maxey to the bench at this point. And I mean, once again, like, in crunch time, obviously he's a guy that we want on the court. I think his shooting has earned that. He garners the respect to space the floor in a way that the Sixers need. And he obviously brings a lot more to the table with his ball handling, pace, attacking the rim, everything that Maxey brings. He deserves to be in the closing lineup for sure. just staggering the minutes, giving it a different look at this point, I think is worth a shot. And I woke up to a text this morning from my dad saying, "Is it time for Niang to start and Tobias to come off the bench?" Which is another thing I haven't hated. I think at this point have flipped in that I would rather Maxey be the guy coming off the bench over Tobias. And I don't think it was ever on the cards or a possibility that Tobias came off the bench because of the contract, the Doc relationship, and everything else that is with Tobias. But looking at Maxey coming off, I mean, I think it'd be cool. I think he has, while it started so perfect with him getting into his zone, finding his shots, creating, doing everything that we love to see, I think he's starting to struggle to find his place in the offense in terms of what is it that I do. And once again, this is another issue that's been a Doc Rivers specifically issue is like the guys that just stand in the corner, stand in the dunker spot, and it's like there's more this guy can do. Like, let's try and work him in, do something that Maxey specifically has different aspects to his game that nobody on the Sixers team has. And to in late game just kind of scrap that and be like, he's just going to be like one of the guys in my system rather than a guy that has capabilities outside of what that system needs, to me is like a backwards thought process. And like, I think it would be useful to have him flashing those, running the show, doing his own thing. So it's difficult. Like once again, it's kind of like we're running into the same issues at the end, and it's all how things are staggered, how things are managed through the game. But starting with that, like maybe it changes the starting point, so it will change the end point. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and it's just one of those things that like I remember when the Sixers decided that Al Horford was going to come off the bench. And I remember it working for a little bit. They were like, okay, this is, we can work with this. Obviously, it didn't totally work, but it was one of those things that it just changed something up enough to, switch the mindset. Because right now, it's just like they get stuck in these ruts. Like they just look like shit for so long. And, the more that the other team's playing well, the more pressure you feel in the game and the higher the heights of the game, it feels like they just choke. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but the other night during the Bucks game, that last minute, I said it's not going to go in. They're not going to make a shot. They don't make this shot.
Yeah.
That sucks to say. That sucks to feel. That sucks because it's just the way like they blow so many leads. The closer the game gets or the more intense the game feels, it feels like they shorten their playbook and get less creative and just say, Joel, please. And sometimes he makes that shot, sometimes he doesn't. But it feels like the times that he doesn't, it's just like, okay, he missed it. And then he comes down and then, he gets doubled, but he feels like he has to shoot. So he's going to shoot it again. And he's going to miss it again because it's a bad shot. Like the same thing with the Bucks game. He did the spin move. He didn't have to shoot that. It wasn't a terrible shot. I like Joel taking that shot. But like he had to create his own offense, spin off of a double team, take the the defensive player of the year into a spin move where he's contested from both sides and has to try to make a contested jumper when like you have 4 really talented offensive players on the court in those moments. I love Joel. He deserves, like I know you posted the poll the other day. He deserves to get that last shot. What they need to do is stop just doing this bullshit of here's your chance, make something happen. Because that's not how basketball works anymore, man. It's like there's so many more guys that are better basketball minds and better at executing their system on the floor all over the NBA. You could go out and pick any one of them, and I genuinely feel like they should have got Billy Donovan. They had so many options. I'm just so like, I don't know how much longer I can take it.
The Ty Lue one hurts for me. I look at Ty
Yeah,
Lue, such a great coach.
great
And
coach.
but we got Doc. Uh, but looking at, there's some extent that I obviously agree with what you're saying with in terms of like, it is definitely give it to Joel and bail him out. There's also like some of that's NBA basketball at this point is when you look at late games watching, it's always the best player on the team going, creating his own luck, giving a shot, and the team rides or dies with that. It happened with the Bulls last night, DeMar DeRozan doing that. Happened with the Nets with KD. KD got fouled last night. Giannis also got fouled down the other end. But same kind of idea. Giannis hit a massive shot to win the game for the Bucks. A three, a big step back kind of three for him, which is not his game at all. And like it's different because Embiid is a big man versus most of these guys are more perimeter based. Giannis is not, but KD obviously is, and DeMar mid range guy. But for Embiid to be that guy, like I don't know. To me, I put more blame on the leading up to it than that specific moment. Like last night specifically, and I'm a ride or die guy with Joel for sure. I love
Absolutely.
this guy, but like the 3 turnovers late in the fourth quarter absolutely killed this team last night. And this was at the point where I believe it was a 3-point game. I think they were down three when there was one when they were down three that absolutely stood out to me. Where he just coughed it up and bad
Yep.
pass. He threw one out of bounds and like that stuff can't happen. Like that's even we didn't even get to the point where we can ride or die with the Joel Embiid shot against the Detroit Pistons, who went into the game tied for the worst record in the league because of like the costly mistakes and turnovers leading up to that. And it's super frustrating to me that it's like this is kind of like an issue back in his game. Like this was something that kind of went away for a little bit. He'd been taking good care of the ball. He'd been more careful. The turnovers had not been as blatant. He's been getting to his spots, being smart with the ball. But they're kind of sneaking back into like this is now a Joel Embiid issue again. And when we talk about his evolution as a player and everything he's done, everything he's improved on, to me, that's the like circled like number one concern is like that just cannot happen. And when you are being careless and sloppy, and some of them are like so frustrating because it's just like, dude, it's just a pass. Just make that like the ones he's throwing out of bounds are just so I don't know. The turnovers, I guess, to me are a number one concern in terms of like the Sixers moving forward. And it's very frustrating that it's kind of back in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think, in positions like that, like really the only options for them right now is Embiid goes down, he posts up, like, and these guys are fronting him and they're playing outside before he even gets like they're essentially double teaming him before he even gets the ball most of
Yeah.
the time, and like they just know that that's the only thing that they want to do, and I know that that's the best option for the Sixers. He's the best player on the team. He's the best player, like I said, arguably in the world. But there has to be other ways to get him involved. And the screen and roll with James Harden, obviously it's been implemented and they use that a lot. But like there has to be something more. There has to be more than just that. And you see all these, and I know that that's, you talked about it with Giannis and all these guys, but Giannis missed a wide open three the possession before he hit that three wide open because Drew Holiday drove in baseline, kicked out, it got swung to him. He missed the three, but it was wide open and he didn't touch the ball until he took the shot.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't happen for Joel Embiid with 15 seconds left in a game. It very rarely. And Giannis, he took the ball down. It ended up kicking around to him again, and then he hit the step back, which, by the way, incredible for him.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. He's added that to his game.
Yeah.
But like, I just want a little bit more creative. Not even a little bit. The offense needs to change entirely.
So
And you
sorry.
have the facilitator for it.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was going to is like the solution to a lot of these issues that we were ready for was James Harden, and that adding
Yeah.
him to this offense would provide these different elements that things could change, and that really has not happened. Like coming down to late game, it's the same thing, it's same relying on thing. It's like,
Yeah.
and Harden has not been his best. Like whether
No.
it's the hamstring or his age, whatever it is, I don't think either way it's fixed for the playoffs, and it's a major concern. But he does lack that like pop, that explosiveness, the ability to just get by guys or get in front of guys. And he has his moments. Like he was dicing around a little bit in the Pistons game. He had Kelly Olynyk on skates a couple times, which is fun to watch. But it's
Yeah.
like that has to equate to success on the court. And like hit, I I'm getting so sick of the like Embiid already carries such a heavy criticism for foul baiting, and Harden's so much harder to watch in that aspect for me. Like Embiid, I feel like at least kind of earns his stripes to get to the line. He bangs bodies, he goes, he attacks, he gets his arms in there. Harden, it feels so desperate and just flailing his arms, hoping he gets attacked. And
Yeah.
I keep coming back to like that's not going to work in the playoffs. Like as the whistles get the refs swallow whistles more as it becomes more of like an in-game whatever happens happens rather than the regular season there are the bailout calls because you're a star and that kind of thing. Like having that as your primary go-to cannot be a sustainable way to win. And especially like for a guy at this stage in his career that Harden's for sure on the bottom end of his prime. If he's I think he still is a little bit in his prime. I think he still has enough of that juice, but like it's either the step back three or getting to the line, and that feels like it with James Harden. And I
Yeah.
want there to be so much more, and especially off. Like I saw a bunch of talk about developing more like catch and shoot looks for him. It's like I've never seen a player look more uncomfortable to catch and shoot the ball than James Harden. Like he has to have his dribble in, step back. Like that's part of his timing
Yeah.
and his shot. But that's crazy that is. Like that absolutely has to be a possibility in the repertoire where James Harden can just catch and shoot because it's that simple of a basketball motion and that common thing that so many players do multiple times a game, every single game. And like the facilitator and the creator, like this should be the guy creating looks for Embiid if that's what we're going to, which I'm totally okay with because I agree we ride or die with this guy. This is who's got us here. This is our superstar. But just having a guy that can, even Harden at his worst, has the gravity to change the defense and change looks and cause a double at times and guys to blitz him 30 feet out from the basket. That all needs to be translated to providing better looks for Embiid and not asking him to have to create all on his own. And it's just not happening. And I don't know how much of that is Harden versus Doc. I think I put more of that on Harden, to be honest, because when you're on the court, it's up to you to make things happen. And it isn't. So I don't know. I would like there has to be more creativity. It feels like Harden's like such a new piece that isn't being utilized, particularly in these late game situations. And it's like we shouldn't be doing the same things that we've always done because we now have a new means of doing things, and that's not what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, but like you think back to those first 4 or 5 games, like what happened?
I don't know. I
To
don't know.
me, I'll call back, and again, this might be me reaching because of, the disdain I'm feeling right now, but they weren't running plays. They were
Yeah.
playing basketball, and they said that. They're, we don't have anything. Like James doesn't know anything. We're literally just playing. And Embiid on the JJ Redick podcast, which we'll talk about later, he asked him, like, was that natural? Like, did it just happen when you guys watching film? What were you doing? And he's like, it was just natural right away. We understood each other. And why did it show so much over the first 4 games? And granted, they played not great teams, like the Knicks and the Timberwolves, not great teams. But like now they're losing to the Pistons, so that doesn't even matter. Why did it click so much? Why did the offense? Why was Maxey so involved? And Tobias wasn't putting up the numbers, but he was being efficient and he was doing his job. Like Harden was, and Embiid, the pick and roll was working. Like where along the line do other teams adjust and the Sixers don't readjust? And again, I don't know. We don't really know for sure what's going on. And again, it is one game. James Harden played really well against the Bucks. It's been that bad game, good game, bad game, good game, and you've talked about it from the start. That's kind of James Harden is a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't like the seeding right now. It doesn't matter. We've talked about it. They're going to be probably at this point. They're going to end up at 4, is what it might look like. I mean, unless they end up winning the next 5. But
Which
even
is
then,
also
who knows?
possible.
It
That
is
is
also possible. They're bad. I mean, they played bad teams, but they just played a bad team and they lost. So, but like, I don't mind being the 4, right? You're gonna see, you're gonna see all these teams anyway, and actually, it might end up working out better that way. So like, it's not about the loss necessarily. It's just about the shit that keeps like perpetuating the problems, the issues that we see from this team that we saw in like October, November. Like, it's just bothersome that those are still going on, especially with the addition of
Yeah.
Harden.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree. The Bulls and the Cavs are the 2 teams I've circled as I guess my ideal matchups for the playoffs. And there should be a lot more on this list for the caliber of team that I would have hoped the Sixers are at this point, but honestly, there's not. I think even those 2 teams, like the Cavs, I have a little bit of concern about just because of their length, their athleticism. Jared Allen's been hurt. They're kind of on the decline for this season in a similar way to the Sixers. So not to put us on our high horse, but
Yeah, right.
looking at their last 5 games, like they play the Pistons again, they play the Pacers twice. They have a chance to like go out on a high note, but like I think this is up there with the lowest point of the season, which is not a spot you want to be heading into the playoffs. And it's so hard with midseason trades and with a player of like Harden's stature in noteworthy because so much changes and it just I don't know. The weird part is like I don't even feel like it's not quite fitting. Like I feel like the
No.
potential for this all to work is still right there, and it just isn't for whatever reason. And it's hard to put your finger on it, but there just is a lack in flow in this team. There's a lack in like just movement, consistency. Everything is just not quite there, and they're pretty much running out of time to get it there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, and I don't want to sound like this type of guy. Like I'm not putting blame on the players because I am. I just really don't think that Doc Rivers is a capable NBA coach anymore. And I genuinely think until they move on from him, they're going to be winning despite Doc Rivers rather than with Doc Rivers. So I don't know, man. I don't know where it goes from here. Like these guys are just this team is just too good. I mean, I guess the top of the team is too good. I really am curious to see what they do this offseason. Like you have three guys that you're not trading, and I think everyone else is uh, you know, available
Hmm.
to be moved on from.
I will say I think it's somewhat of a make or break off season for Daryl Morey in terms of
Yep.
like you've got your top now. We've got like the core of the team. You have to round out this roster in a way that like makes sense, fits with everybody. You got to add more athleticism. You got to add more depth, and there's a lot of boxes that need to be checked for this to be a complete team. And looking back at kind of Morey's reputation and who he's been, obviously he's a guy that kind of swings for the fences, gets things done in terms of number one, like stars and big trades. I have less confidence in the like filling out the roster. And that's like, there's a limited window that we're working with as much as like nobody kind of wants to admit that. Like Harden's for sure on the tail end of his prime. There's always been the questions about how long Joel's will be here. Next year needs to be the year where this team is complete. There's absolutely like a top to bottom roster that can win. And if that doesn't happen, like we're really running the risk of letting this slip away as a franchise.
Yeah, I absolutely think that the goal should be to round out this team with guys that fit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like I was thinking about it just earlier when you were talking. Like I need a Dante DiVincenzo. I need a Josh Hart. Like
Yeah. Forget Bradley Beal. Get me Josh
get me
Hart.
one
Yeah.
of those. Get me one of those two guys. Like I'm dead serious. I need a really like because Matisse is so good defensively, but like if you had Dante DiVincenzo catching and shooting, and then also playing really good defense, and also
Mhm.
as a tertiary ball handler, like that makes so much more sense to me.
Yeah.
Um,
A
and
guy
like
a guy slightly worse at defense that is competent on the offensive end is
yeah,
still a major upgrade in my mind. I totally agree.
yeah, and if you're able to keep Matisse, like I don't think he should be first on your list to move, obviously, but if he can come off the bench, um, that makes so much more sense. Like if you replace, like if you took Danny Green, but a decade ago, like that's the perfect player that you need to play in Thibel's spot, and you're going to move on from Tobias most likely. There's ways to get this done, and I'm not gonna say I'm not confident in Morey because I am, but you're right. Bradley Beal is a lot sexier than Josh Hart, but I think the real move should be get two really solid guys to step in as starters, and then just roll out that bench and figure it out from there. And you have two centers that should be used. I don't think you have to spend any money on a backup center.
Yeah.
Uh, but you would know that if Doc would play, see what they have. But regardless, I do want to talk about the post game comments a little bit
Yeah.
because there were some interesting ones from Joel after Milwaukee,
Hmm.
and there seems to be one really big one. But from what I've seen, a lot of people are saying it's being a little misconstrued. So just
Yeah.
talk to me about the Joel's comments before, or I'm sorry, after Milwaukee, and then go into the Doc Rivers after Detroit.
Yeah, the Joel one that caught my eye specifically was about how he pretty much thinks he should mirror the minutes with Giannis, and he talked about how the Bucks went on that run when he was off the court, which is what happened at the end of the third and start of the fourth, and those 6 game minutes, and Embiid came in with a little over 9 left to play to try and take it home from there, but it had gone from the Sixers leading by 12 at the tail end of the third, and then by 10 going into the fourth quarter, and obviously it just went away. So I mean, once again, like it changes a little bit how you coach things in regular season versus playoffs, but in playoffs, like that absolutely has to be the case. And we saw the Bucks mirroring Brooke Lopez's minutes with Joel.
Yeah.
Like the Sixers have to have an adjustment with Giannis as well. And I mean, I feel like we're beating the same drum, but like not making the in-game adjustments, not doing that for a player of Giannis's caliber absolutely commands that, and you have to do it. And Joel's right about it. And in playoffs, that has to happen. There also was not a lot of time where Embiid was the primary defender of Giannis. There was still a whole lot of Tobias, a whole lot of Paul Millsap, and I get not wanting him to get in foul trouble, but you have to do that. And I don't think that's a Joel thing. Like I do generally believe Joel that he would like to do that, and would take that challenge, that has to be the in-game adjustment. And again, like he's better as a roamer, he's better as a rim protector, but you still, for a player of Giannis's caliber, have to make that change no matter what it does to your team behind it. You figure out the rest. The primary goal has to be stopping Giannis when you're playing the Bucks because that's their identity, and it didn't happen. So he's right about that. I also have the like quote that's being blown up after last night's game was like Doc basically blaming James Harden for like the bench struggles when asked about the bench. I've also seen a whole bunch of it being misinterpreted by a bunch of the beat reporters, so I'm not gonna read too heavily into that. I my take on it as a whole is regardless of like if that's your opinion or not, I didn't think it was a good answer to the question. Like I think you can still word things way better in a way that like this whole kind of issue doesn't happen. And I don't know how I feel as far as blame with the bench unit. It was Harden in the bench unit. They're running a 5 out for a lot of it, where it was there was a stretch where they played Harden, Toby, Niang, Shake, and Furkan, I believe, was the lineup of 5 for a stretch, and just all along the perimeter. And it was kind of like it like once again, like I feel like we're hitting the same thing. If there was no flow, it was all stand around and watch and that. And I don't know. It's frustrating. I don't make too much of the comments overall. I'm cool with it on Joel's end. I don't have an issue with Doc's either.
No, I was laughing when you were talking about the Brook Lopez, matching the minutes, and I think I remember like pretty specifically saying how I'd rather have Doc Rivers than Mike Budenholzer, and then you pointed out something so simply as matching a really good defensive center up with the Sixers' best center, and I was like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense. Well, no wonder Mike Budenholzer won a championship, but I don't know, man. It's tough right now. I was totally cool with Joel's comments. I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care if Doc's feelings are hurt. I'm glad Joel's speaking his mind. This is the type of, for a guy that's been around the game for so long and flaunts that like it's jewelry, he's very often, misunderstood in his post-game pressers and, says the wrong things at the wrong time and, does things in a very harsh, brash way. I don't know, man. I don't know why I don't know why you say anything about James Harden at this point. If you're Doc Rivers, I mean, I get it, I guess, but to like, even if you didn't mean it that way, kind of blaming him for the way that a bench is playing when the bench has been bad for a long time, and maybe there's some truth there. Harden and DeAndre Jordan are playing. It would be great in 2013. That would have been awesome. But DeAndre Jordan can't move. And he doesn't, I saw him run full sprint last night and he couldn't get in front of Isaiah Stewart, who was going 50% like up the floor. And I'm like, this is just.
He calls for the ball very heavily, DeAndre Jordan. He does a whole lot of throwing his hands up, calling for the ball for a guy that should not be touching the ball that much. So I definitely see him sprinting down the court, calling for it in ways that it's just like the ball definitely should not be passed to you there.
If he catches the ball at the 3-point line, I am screaming, get it out, get it out, get it out.
I think he feels the same way too. He's kind of like pivoting, kind of pretending like he knows what to do, and he wants the ball out of his hands too. The guy that is purely there to catch lobs has been his identity through his entire career, and I can't expect like that to change whatsoever now at 35.
I don't know, man. Pretty so we kind of got all that out of the way. There's still a lot of concerns going into the rest of the season, but they go to Charlotte on Saturday, tomorrow evening, and kind of hoping for a little bounce back here. It'd be a nice, the Hornets aren't that good, and you should beat that team. You should. I mean, they're eliminated. It's only. I mean, all the teams that are out of playoff contention, like not in the hunt, or not in the play-in. Everyone's out,
team, aren't they?
Are they?
I believe so.
They might be 10. I know it's. I mean, it's Toronto, Brooklyn, Atlanta, and maybe they're the 9.
Yeah, I believe they are the 9, and yeah, they are the 9. Yeah, so they will be in the playoffs.
39 and
40 and 37. They still have LaMelo. I actually do like the Hornets team, I would say, more than, I don't know, the general public or maybe just you, James. I feel like they're a pretty well liked and respected team. A lot of young talent, a team that unfortunately could give the Sixers issues at this point. And I don't know. I don't think it's a walk-in win. I'll say that.
Well, none of them are clearly when you go and play the Pistons, and that's the result. Yeah, but I mean, hopefully he can get back on track on Saturday. Before we go, we want to talk really briefly about Joel Embiid's appearance on JJ Redick's podcast. Just a great listen. Joel is a joy,
Yeah.
and JJ Redick and Tommy Arthur do a good job. And I listen to that podcast a lot, but that was a really good episode.
Yeah, definitely worth a listen. The top 3 NBA players was a cool
Yeah,
talk. He talked a little bit about defensive player of the year. Cool to get in Embiid's brain. Like I like how
yeah,
Reddick kind of would pull up clips, ask him like he was talking about the foul baiting a lot, of course, but there were other moments too where it's like I don't know, just kind of letting Joel like articulate himself is it's cool to listen to. And
yeah.
he's a guy that obviously we see what he does on the court so much, but he's an like awesome person as well. So it's cool to just kind of see that get a window into his mind, his outlook, and him and Reddick definitely. It was cool to see Reddick's pride in Joel definitely too.
Yeah, that last part, really heartwarming, man. It's, I mean, it's true though. I think he kind of shares that pride as all Sixers fans do, the way that we've seen him grow. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame. I wish JJ stayed.
Yeah,
I really wish he stayed until he retired. But it was really good listen to hear Joel talk about his the way that he trains, the way he approaches defense, his thoughts on him saying that he's better than Bill Russell. Uh, you know, in context. But yeah,
yeah.
totally great listen. I don't know, man. You have anything else?
No, I'm still pretty down. Usually,
That was the
usually,
saddest no of all time.
usually by the end of the
No.
pod, I'm like, all right, I got it all out. I'm still kind of down in the dumps today.
Yeah, me too. I feel like I haven't gotten it all off my chest, but I
Hmm.
don't know, man. I'm bitter right now. I definitely am. I've been as this. I feel like this is as bad as I felt right now, in
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, very difficult spot to be in with like under 10 games to the playoffs and pretty much at the low point in the season for the Sixers. So I guess one way to look at it is there's only up from here, but not feeling that way right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll hopefully we'll get back to you guys on Tuesday with a little bit of a more optimistic outlook on the rest of this season. So stay tuned for some updates. Check for this podcast to come out. You can follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Bernard1. Follow me at JSbrain17. Follow the pod at PickSwapPod. Check out the YouTube. Find us anywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you check our link in the bio and in the bio of the episode as well, on iTunes or Spotify. The link for our BetUS page, and use our code PickSwap at login to get your first bet risk free up to $500. Take care, and we'll talk to you guys next week.